Ajijic. And the ones speaking today are James Tipton, Robert Bruce Drynan, Mel Goldberg, and Rambles. They are going to explore with us the capacity of the human spirit to endure the seemingly unendurable and the transformative consequences. They're going to talk about trust, acceptance, and honor put to the test by the extreme life experiences examined through the lens of selections from this recently published book. This is their first appearance here talking about their book, their lives, and reading their selections. We welcome you. Please come up.
My thing, these devices. Thank you, Kat, and thank you all for being here. These three gentlemen, yes, no, that includes you, are three of the best friends I've ever had, actually, and for years we've gotten together frequently for coffee or breakfast or lunch, and usually to share things about our own lives or to share things about stories we were working on. All of us love writing fiction, and we all work to help each other become better writers. My name is Jim Tipton, and this is Mel Goldberg right here. His latest book is Catch a Killer, Save the World, available locally at various places. This is Bob Drynan, author of several novels, the latest of which is a book called Shadow of Nemesis, and next to him is Antonio Rambles, whose latest book is called The Mirasol Redemption. About a year ago, we're drinking coffee, talking about our short stories. If you'd like to talk, well, I've got to say it. A year ago, we were talking about our latest short stories, and Bob said, you know, a lot of our stories have a common theme of survival, of facing very difficult circumstances that life had not really prepared us to face. Some of you have been in that very position. Probably all of us have, one way or the other. And Bob said, why don't we collect some of those stories together into a little anthology? And so we all thought that was a great idea. And so we once again re-edited each other's work 2 or 3 times and went over and over the stories we wanted to include, and we ended up with our anthology called Embracing the Fog, and Mel will tell you more about that.
I think I'm on. Okay. This is a copy of the book. And in one sense, fog becomes a metaphor for the environment in which we all live. We have 2 choices. We either embrace it, or we become lost in the haze. Many years ago, during a particularly difficult period in my life, I underwent hypnotherapy. And I read quite a bit about hypnosis and the power of the mind. And that became the genesis for my story called The Gift. I wondered if someone could control life and death with the strength of his mind. What would be the consequences of that kind of power? In my story, George Martinez, the main character, is a cop in Phoenix, Arizona. He and his partner Kevin get called to a domestic disturbance. As they break open the door to the house, they see William Carmichael, gun in hand, beating his wife. Carmichael turns, fires 1 shot toward them. Martinez becomes an instant paraplegic. He must learn to embrace his fog. And he does, but in a way he neither expects nor at first understands. And he also learns a very tragic lesson. I'm going to read an excerpt from my story, The Gift. Martinez has been in therapy, is about to be released from the hospital. He rejects a desk job with the police force because he says that's a make-work position, and he doesn't want it. He decides he wants to go back to school, using the money from his disability and his insurance, and train for some other occupation totally removed from law enforcement. Something working with disabled people, where no one will feel sorry for him. The story, The Gift, is told by Martinez, and the part I'm going to read begins on page 202, if any of you happen to have copies. This is Martinez's story. The day before I was released, I wheeled myself down to physical therapy to say goodbye to Bob, my therapist. But on the desk sat a large, dark-skinned man I didn't know. His eyes were closed. His legs were crossed yoga style. He wore a white jacket unbuttoned across his big barrel chest, with sleeves ending 2 inches above his wrist. His arms lay limply at his sides, and his forefingers touched his thumbs. "Where's Bob?" He shook his head as if he were waking from sleep. "Oh, he's gone on holiday. You call it vacation, I believe." "I just came by to say goodbye and to thank him. I am Dr. Ali Ahmadi." He jumped from the desk and vigorously shook my hand. Then he opened one of the desk drawers. "I give you this booklet on home exercises and therapy. Bob said you are progressing beautifully. You will need to call him to set up more therapy appointments. Did he ever speak to you about compensation?" "Compensation?" I grimaced with disgust. "I don't mean to be rude, but if you tell me that losing one faculty increases the others, I'll vomit." "Oh, no. I would never tell you that. You will increase your arm strength, but that will come from use." The large man walked to the front of the desk and leaned toward me. "I mean, you might gain a totally new ability. One that you never had before. Some colleagues of mine in Kashmir worked with one man who lost his vision, but developed the unusual ability to hear what people were thinking." No shit. I was unimpressed. I leaned back, balanced on 2 wheels, and spun around to go. I was getting pretty good at maneuvering my chair. "Oh yes," he continued, following me to the door. "But they said he hated it. Hearing other people's secrets. Poor fellow went mad and killed himself." "Yeah, well, I'll keep that in mind." Kevin and a few police friends took me home. While I was in the hospital, they had remodeled my 3rd-floor condo, making the doorways wider and outfitting the kitchen so I could wheel myself to the sink and the stove. They had installed a floor urinal in the bathroom, which made it easy for me to empty my urine jar. For 2 weeks, I had visitors every day. They started to come by less and less frequently, and at the end of the month, I realized I had been alone for 2 days. In the weeks that followed, I learned to make do. I joined a gym to exercise my upper body, waiting for special buses to take me to school. Shopping and the gym consumed my time. Activities that had once taken a few minutes now consumed large chunks of my day. Then, unwanted and unasked for, the ability came, my gift. And the better part of a year elapsed before I knew I even had it, or began to understand it. At 28, I'd been called a hero in the Hispanic community. officer material, potential leader. Now, at age 30, I was just a disabled ex-cop, and yet disabled as everyone thought I was. I learned to dispense justice better than any court. 10 months after my release from the hospital, Carmichael was tried, sentenced to 15 years. His lawyer claiming he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. I was not called to testify at the trial. 2 months after his incarceration at the Arizona State Prison at Florence, I got a letter from the DOC. Carmichael had asked me to visit him. I didn't want to go, but the department brass felt it would make good headlines and good PR. You know, wheelchair-bound cop visits man who shot him. I guess they wanted me to say things like how much I have to be thankful for and how much I now appreciate life and all that crap. The warden, Carson McWilliams, welcomed the opportunity to show off the facility since I was to be accompanied by a television crew from Phoenix's Fox 10 News along with 2 reporters and a photographer from the Arizona Republic. McWilliams set up the visit on Tuesday. Visitation for general inmate population is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so I knew this was special. He wanted the meeting to take place in the general visiting area, a large room with tables, folding chairs, and concession machines. No way will I see him in the visiting room where he has access to candy bars, sodas, and chips. I insisted I would only see him where he was confined to his gray 8 by 10-foot cell with the open toilet. 1 year to the day, I had been shot. The news crew and I waited for the steel doors to clang open. Then I rolled down the corridor to a cell and heard the door bang shut behind us. The motley entourage followed me, planning to film and take pictures. We stationed ourselves in front of Carmichael's cell. "Why do you want to see me?" I spoke loudly to him through the bars. With my back to the cameras, I had no need to smile. "You don't have to shout," the cameraman said. "Our equipment is very sensitive." Carmichael walked toward me, squinting in the harsh light of the video. To apologize and hope you can somehow forgive me. There's nothing I can say that would erase what I did." I know what everyone wanted me to say, but I couldn't believe this son of a bitch. Tears actually wet the man's eyes, and he tried to blink them away. I was crazy drunk and on PCP. I really didn't know what I was doing. You can't know how sorry I am for what I did. If there was any way I could repay you, I would. The moment he said it, I felt disgust for him. I hated his sniveling. I despised him for not taking responsibility for his actions, for blaming drugs and alcohol. He couldn't even bring himself to say the word cripple. I especially hated him for his cowardly way of asking for forgiveness, as if it were his right to ask and my duty to grant. He held his hands on the bars, and I, real close, put my right hand on top of his. The cameraman signaled for a profile of me, so I smiled, but I leaned forward so only Carmichael could hear me. "God may grant forgiveness," I whispered, "but I never will. I want you to die in this miserable cell." Then I rolled back a few inches and faced him again, glaring at the man who put me in the wheelchair. My hatred and anger engulfed me like a wave of heated air from a furnace. I closed my eyes and gripped the arms of my wheelchair. Tension spread across my chest like a rope pulling tight. Then the rope loosened and the air cooled. When I opened my eyes, Carmichael lay on the floor of his cell, staring at the ceiling. The reporters were shouting. A guard opened the steel door at the end of the corridor and came running. He asked what happened, and without waiting for an answer, radioed for help. Fortunately for me, the entire incident had been caught on camera. My only physical contact with Carmichael had been the touch of my hand on his. I gave my deposition. The autopsy showed Carmichael had suffered a massive coronary. The incident made the 10 o'clock news on 3 channels. and one reporter called it poetic justice. 2 days later, it had been forgotten in the mayhem of another day. At the time, I thought it was coincidence. But I couldn't forget that intense grip of hatred, so profound, my chest muscles ached as if I had lifted weights. It was not an unpleasant ache. That was the beginning. Okay, I'd like to introduce Bob Drynan, who's going to tell you about his stories.
Well, you've seen us 4 bearded monkeys up here. And I've been preceded by see no evil and hear no evil, and that leaves me with speak no evil, so I speak with. Actually, I'm going to tell you about a little bit about 4 stories. The first story is called Klatsch. Klatsch is a German expletive one, let's say. Klatsch is a German expletive, mild expletive that means something like nonsense or twaddle. A young American soldier is in a bar in Nuremberg on the 31st of December 1959. He's a young soldier. And he meets a German soldier who was taken prisoner at the Battle of Stalingrad and then spent the next 16 years of his life as a slave laborer in the Soviet Union. The man explains his story, how his wife and daughter waited for him before he was finally set free. And the young soldier had just got demoted from sergeant down to corporal, and he'd broken up with his girlfriend. So they talked, and the old man told the story, and he had his line. He said, "Love is everything. Everything else is Klatsch, nonsense." When I was a soldier in Germany, I had such an encounter with a man in a bar in Munich on the 31st of December, 1959. I had just broken up with my German girlfriend. And from these experiences came this story. You have to figure out for yourselves what part of the story is truth and what part of the story is fiction. The second story is one called Home by Christmas. In its introduction, I say, in the waning months of 1950, following an early amphibious assault on Chapala, an exuberant Douglas MacArthur ordered his army north of the Yalu River to destroy the rest of the remains of the North Korean army. Home by Christmas was his motto, the mantra he gave to his soldiers that he was commanding. Mao Zedong had another idea. This is the backstory of the protagonist of my first novel, Domain of the Scorpion. His name was Drynan. He was a 17-year-old Marine when he was drawn into the Chosin Reservoir battle in December and November of 1950. He made it home for Christmas. The next one is a story called Ad Lara. It's a Latin term meaning home to the house gods or home to the heart. In the 1970s, when I was working in Europe, I used to drive from Rome to Milan several times. And I passed a farmstead near the turnoff to Siena. There was an old stone house down in a gully alongside the highway. It looked like it had been there for a couple of millennia. It was just primitive as it could be. And there was a very small arrowhead-shaped field that was always seemed to be just finished for cultivating. I wrote a story about a young businessman who saw that house and had a feeling of comfort about it. And so one day he decided to stop and go down and visit the house and see what he could find out about it. And there he met a house lar. A lar is the old pagan household gods of the home and the hearth in Rome in the 5th century, up to the 5th century, that was there. The lar explained the backstory of that house. In the last story, 10 soles. Soles are the coinage of Peru. The backpacker trudges into a Peruvian village in the high Andes on market day with a single 10-sol coin in his pocket. He spotted a youth seated against the once white adobe wall. The boy appeared small. His second glance made it clear he had no legs. The boy sat, stumps above the knee, thrust outward on a board with a cash drawer in each corner. The youth held out an empty wooden bowl. He held out a single coin. On impulse, the man reached in his pocket, pulled out his last 10 soles, and put it in the bowl, and then trudged off. He had been a wealthy man, secure in his status as a corporate leader and growing political influence. He had an exciting, beautiful, intelligent wife and twin boys finishing prep school. Then one day in his top floor office, he huddled with his personal attorney, completed documents, assigning all of his possessions to his wife and providing for the benefits of his children. Last, he handed the lawyer a letter for his family, left a letter of resignation on his desk, picked up a backpack and a suitcase filled with the clothing he would exchange for the suit and tie of his culture. He pocketed an airline ticket to Santiago, Chile, in a pouch containing $10,000 in cash, and he walked away. Those are the 4 stories that I have. Please introduce
Morning. Can you hear me? Hello? 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 We're good? There we go. The essence of the American myth is the idea that anyone can succeed through initiative and hard work. And for baby boomers, this really came to mean earning power would always keep pace with their appetites. A lot of those folks had no reason to doubt it until the Great Recession arrived in Christmas 2007. Suddenly, employees at the top of their pay grade within a decade of retirement became layoff targets. You go into any Starbucks in the States at that time, and white-collar unemployed would nurse a single cup of coffee through the entire day while they polished resumes and networks and sent out job applications on Wi-Fi laptops. Even after months of unemployment, many continued to delude themselves that a job was just around the corner, and they continued to live life in the style to which they'd become accustomed, right up until the savings were gone and their benefits had expired. Homeowners who had once had housekeepers or nannies or gardeners were now living in rented apartments. They were doing laundry at the laundromat. They were riding city buses. And in boredom or in desperation, some took jobs as clerks or greeters or grocery store clerks. What I've just described to you is the setting for my short story, Folding Money, which takes place at the height of the Great Recession. More than anything else, it's a story.
So sorry.
That's all right.
The sound is because one of these is on.
That's all right. You want me to continue? That's all right. What I've just described for you is the setting of my short story, Folding Money, and it takes place at the height of the Great Recession. More than anything else, it's a story about acceptance. Lifelong journalist Connor is 50-something with a home foreclosure, car repo, and a divorce just behind him. He's now working at a no-name coffee house where he's underemployed as a barista. He often works with Danielle, who calls herself Danny. She's a childless divorcee in her late 20s, living at home with her divorced mother and her mother's very disturbing boyfriend. And it's just after opening time at the coffee house that this scene opens. Connor and Danny are talking. "I feel like I just left here," Connor said as he wiped down the machine. "Maybe it's because I've got nothing else going on." "Well, there's not much going on here either," Danny replied. "This is the slowest day ever." Connor looked across at the empty tables. "Starbucks must have bailed out of this place for a reason." "I don't need to hear that," she replied. "The last place I worked closed only a month after I started. I just want 6 weeks out of this place." "Oh, coming into some money soon?" "Nope, I'm just 6 weeks of paychecks behind." "Alimony?" she asked sympathetically. He wore no wedding band, but he seemed to her to have that married look. When he didn't answer, her voice turned teasing. "Gambling debts?" "No, just unemployment." Her voice was sympathetic again. "How long were you out?" "More than 18 months. Got caught in the first wave of layoffs." "Oh, what kind of work did you do?" she asked. "Reporter, the Dallas Morning News, 31 years. A customer pushed the sandwich across the counter at Danny. She rang it up. Connor caught himself staring at her and quickly looked away. She was, after all, young enough to be his daughter. Danny made change and turned back to him. "You worked at the same place for 31 years? No one does that anymore." "It was my first job out of school. I liked the work, and they liked me. Might have ridden it all the way to retirement, not for the damn recession." "It sucks," she agreed. When her mother's creepy boyfriend is arrested for fraud and the house is turned into a crime scene, Danny moves out. Her father is expected to wire some money for a place of her own, but he's traveling abroad, in remote territory, and she's homeless until he can be tracked down. And it's not until Connor offers her a place to stay that she learns that he's now living in a self-storage unit. The roommate talk often turns to Connor's struggle to fully accept his new reality. And as they sit there in this storage unit talking one evening, she asks, "So you were one of those investigative reporters?" "Something like that." "Did you ever crack a big case?" "Only once. It was a guy on trial for murder about 3 years ago. He was a dishwasher in a diner where the owner was killed in an after-hours robbery. I don't know if the police really thought he did it or he was just a suspect in convenience, but he had an express ticket to lethal injection when I got the story." "What happened?" "Turned out that the owner's wife did it." "You got the dishwasher off?" "Just did my job, dug up the banks." "That's so cool. I thought that stuff only happened on TV." "Most reporters are lucky if it happens once in their entire life." "So what happened to the guy after that?" "He vanished, which is not surprising. People remember accusations a lot longer than they remember acquittals. But I got a call from him about 3 weeks before they pulled the plug on me at the paper. Turned out he'd inherited a motorhome park down in the Rio Grande Valley. Said he wanted to repay me for everything I did for him. Offered me the free use of an RV and a place to berth it. I didn't think much about it at the time. But you thought about it since. Right now, living in a motorhome rent-free doesn't seem like such a bad idea. So why haven't you taken him up on it?" "It could still happen after I scrape together buck's fare and enough to cover me until I can land some work down there." Sudden understanding crossed her face. "And that would take you, say, 6 weeks or so?" He shrugged without answering. She slapped the corrugated metal walls as she pulled her cell phone from her pocket. "Got coverage in here?" "Apparently so. The laptop's wireless." "You don't have a cell phone?" "I can't afford wireless for a cell phone and a laptop, so I went for the laptop. Everyone has email." "No texting?" "I don't have anything to text, or anyone to text it to. No kids, not much family." "I think someone in your line of work would have lots of friends." "Good reporter never gets close enough to his news to get tangled up in it. And trust me, there's far more people that want to have a reporter as a friend than any reporter would want to have as friends." "I don't know if I could live without a phone." "I'll tell you something. Unemployment is like leprosy. Some friends are embarrassed for you. Some are afraid they're looking at their own future. Some who dodged the bullet have survivor's guilt. And others are afraid you'll ask them for a loan. For all of them, email keeps things safely distant." The next day, Danny returned from her break flushed and wide-eyed, cell phone in hand. "I've just got some great news," she said breathlessly. "Oh?" Connor raised an eyebrow. "I finally connected with Daddy. He's wiring me some money in the morning. You're almost rid of me." It was inevitable, Connor knew, but the timing of it caught him off balance. "I'm happy for you," he said, working hard to look sincere. That evening, he dug out the backgammon board. They played several silent games before turning in. "Connor?" He was getting used to the sound of her voice in the darkness. "Yeah?" "Now that I have a place of my own, why don't you come and stay with me for a while?" "We'd probably both regret that inside of a week." "I don't think I'd regret it. Why would you?" "For one thing, I was taught that charity is something you give, not receive." Danny returned to the storage locker for her last time to collect her gear, and once again she appealed to Connor to move into her with her. "I thought we had that conversation already," he said. "You had that conversation," she said emphatically. "What do you have against indoor plumbing and cable TV in the kitchen?" "Look, I've learned to do without most of what I once thought was indispensable, and I've learned how to live by myself for the first time in over 30 years. I don't want to have to relearn that lesson." "You make a few nights at my place sound like a drunk falling off the wagon," she replied in exasperation. "I'm just offering you the same thing you've already given me. And let's just say I don't want to raise any false hopes for my future." "Has it really become that hard for you to believe in the future?" "Reporters are skeptical by nature, and I don't think this recession has bottomed out yet." "Why can't you stop reading meaning into it? Just consider it a random act of kindness." "I've managed without charity this far." "That's nothing but foolish pride talking, and foolish pride is one lonely emotion." "Maybe, but foolish pride is the only kind of pride that I have left."
Jim Tipton.
Can everybody hear me fine in here? No. A little louder? More volume? My beloved grandmother died when I was 15. 8 years later, I was sitting on a sofa in West Lafayette, Indiana, listening to classical music, deeply relaxed, when something shifted. I looked down in front of me to see my grandmother's old black shoes, and then her legs in her baggy old hose, and then her whole body in one of her old-fashioned dresses. She was born in 1871, actually. I looked up and saw her face, looking calm, but a bit confused. Then I looked down at her shoes. They were untied. For the most part, I had been her caretaker, at least emotionally, when I was a boy. And because she was arthritic, I usually tied her shoes for her. Now she had come back 8 years after her death for me to once again tie her shoes. Some final completion. Some of you undoubtedly have had similar experiences. I have spent some time over the years, quite a bit of time in Navajo land and on the Hopi Mesas in western Colorado, near where I live. I got to know a bit about the Navajos and Hopis and was fascinated by their ideas of spirits and ghosts. For the Navajo, there are numerous protective spirits, often a grandparent, but there are also chindis, a particular type of ghost. When a person dies, when all of us die, when a person dies, in Navajo thinking, he leaves behind at the moment of death his chindi. A chindi is basically everything he was unable to bring into harmony during his life. Isn't that an interesting idea? He leaves behind everything he could not bring into harmony. And the rest of him goes on to a higher place. The chindi then is essentially everything quote unquote bad about that person. And so these chindis hang around a bit. And you don't want to have a person die inside of your dwelling because their chindi can remain in there and create lots of havoc. The Navajos prefer to die and have their loved ones die outside the home, for example. In some of the Navajo subdivisions, they actually destroy all of the possessions of that person as well. At any rate, in my story, Willie Bill Begay's, Begay is like Smith in Navajo, in my story, Willie Bill Begay's Long Walk, included in our anthology, Willie Bill Begay is trying to protect his niece from the advances of a white man who happens to be the brother of a deputy sheriff in Gallup, New Mexico, who is set on raping her. I'm going to read several passages from that story, specifically related to the spirits and chindis. Out of Willie Bill Begay's Long Walk. It begins, Willie Bill Begay could walk along. Willie Bill Begay could walk a long time, dragging his bad leg. With each step, he threw out his still strong right hand, pumping it up and down as if the air itself were a walking stick. This morning, while it was still dark, Willie Bill had left Taste Nesla, determined to head along Combe Ridge above Highway 160 to Cayenta on the north end of the Navajo Nation, keeping out of sight. We'll move far into the story now. For weeks now, the white man had been attempting to rape Rebecca, the daughter of his sister Clara. Because this was a family matter, his sister had asked Willie Bill, her only living brother, to help. Because Willie Bill could not move fast, he had to trap the white man in his sister's trailer. When his sister was warned the white man was coming, Willie Bill hid in the family hogan next to the trailer. Willie Bill watched him enter before he himself crept through the late afternoon shadows up to the trailer. When Willie Bill opened the door, the man was already fumbling at the comb-shaped silver buttons on the deep red blouse of a terrified niece. "Get out of here, old fool," he shouted at Willie Bill. "You're the only fool, old fool here," Willie Bill said, looking calmly into his eyes. "This little whore wants me, old man." "But your eyes say different. Your eyes say she is not a little whore. Your eyes say you know she does not want you. No one wants you. That is why you do this bad thing." The man stepped to the door, raised a big fist, and drew it back like he was pulling back a fat arrow. Willie Bill looked at the fist. There were blonde hairs on the red knuckles. When the fist flew out, Willie Bill shifted without effort to the right, and the fist hit only air. Willie Bill smiled. The man then locked his hands around Willie Bill's thin neck. Balanced on one leg, I gotta be careful doing this one. Balanced on one leg, Willie Bill slid out his knife and drove it deeply into the man just below the rib cage and then sharply up into his heart. At the same time, he twisted the man through the door and shoved him off the concrete block steps to die on the dusty earth. Willie Bill wanted his sister and niece to be able to continue to live in the trailer. And now it would not be haunted by the dead man's chimney, his ghost. Then we have Willie Bill escaping, walking on foot with his bad leg for 2 or 3 days down Combe Ridge to Cayenta. Where he intends to escape and live hidden in Navajo land with some relatives of his mother's clan. By late afternoon, Willie Bill was tired. He felt he had been walking on one leg his whole life. Ever since those 3 drunken white boys in Gallup had decided they wanted to beat up a Navajo kid for sport. They had left Willie Bill, only 17 years old, with a leg broken in 3 pieces by a tire iron. The setting had been botched badly by a drunk white doctor in Gallup. Willie Bill had been taken to Kin near Yatahe, just north of Gallup. 4 months later, only half healed, he had been carried in the back of his uncle's pickup to Cayenta, where his grandfather taught him to walk again, and not using crutches or a cane. His grandfather was proud of him. His grandfather was his Chichi, the father of his mother. And it was his grandfather who then had given Willie Bill his war name, One Long Leg. He wanted his grandfather to be walking in the world again. That first night, Willie Bill built his early fire and was beginning to doze off when he heard something rustle in the rocks immediately behind him. He touched his knife, the one he had used to kill the white man, and when he turned, he saw a pair of snakeskin boots slithering toward him. Standing suddenly in them, looking at him with pale eyes, was the Chindi, the man he had killed. Willie Bill motioned the Chindi to sit down beside the fire. They studied each other until the fire was almost gone. And then Willie Bill understood. He opened up his little pouch of cornmeal, held it out, and poured half of it into the Chindi's left hand. Into the right hand, he poured a few drops of water. This Chindi was not a Navajo, but nevertheless, he needed corn and water for his last journey. The Chindi still waited, staring down. Willie Bill reached over, knowing that he would now be badly contaminated by direct contact, and he pulled off those expensive boots, switching them, putting the right boot onto the left foot and the left boot onto the right foot. The Chindi then stood up, nodded with respect, and with awkward steps, moved into the darkness. Now the Chindi would not easily backtrack into the world it needed to leave. The very first thing Willie Bill wanted to do when he got to Cayenta, even though he would have no time, was to take a sweat bath, and the second thing was to take a little of the money he had hidden in the ceiling of his trailer and hire a singer who understood the night way. Otherwise, the Chindi would make him sick. Sick, thought Willie Bill. 2 months ago, the doctor in Cayenta told me I had cancer in my lower parts and I would die soon. And now, even as I am dying of cancer, I might be dying of Chindi. Giving up on sleep, Willie Bill rolled up his blanket and began again to walk. This time most of the night. Almost done in, he stopped at dawn. The sun was returning, coming up over the desert. It looked so close, like he could touch it, if only he could run fast enough. Just as he thought that, the sun playfully rose up out of reach. But it was still good to be here, to sit with one leg crossed, while the fragrance of sage still hung over the desert, like the perfume of a woman who might have visited him long ago before his beating in Gallup. Below, the highway itself was the world of the Belagana, the white man, but up on the ridge it was still the world of the Navajo. This long walk was helping him to return to that world. He had been in his trailer in Cayenta too long. By the second afternoon, he's exhausted. I'll skip on to that. This body is very tired, he thought. It needs to rest a long time. During the second day, he stopped often in the shade of a pinyon or juniper. Sometimes he remembered hunger. Hunger is hurting me. And he would nibble on a piece of jackrabbit jerky or chew on a few pinyon nuts. Toward the end of the second day, although Willie Bill could not see him now, he felt the Chindi near, and once he thought he could make out 2 footprints made by those snakeskin boots that he himself had reversed on the Chindi's feet. But now, Willie Bill could also feel the spirit of his Chichi, his mother's father, dead for more than 20 years. At dusk he turned and saw his grandfather walking beside him, smiling. When he stopped to rest his good leg, he said to his grandfather, Grandfather Spirit, this tiredness is hurting me. What should I do now? His grandfather pointed to a long walking stick just ahead of him on the trail. Willie Bill picked it up and, turning his body in a new way, he continued toward Cayenta. It's much easier to walk now. That evening, after Willie Bill had built a small fire, Grandfather Spirit hunkered down beside him and pointed to some stones close against the fire to build up a pile of hot ones. White men scoffed at spirits. White men scoffed at spirits and visions and called them hallucinations. They thought spirits and visions did not exist. What his grandfather had told him long ago was that hallucinations did not exist. Hallucinations did not exist. Hallucination was just a word made up by white men to help them hide from the world of spirits and visions. Grandfather Spirit then pointed to his canteen, and Willie Bill removed all of his clothes and splashed a little of the remaining precious water onto the hot rocks. He bent into the steam and listened to Grandfather Spirit sing a night way song. After the song had faded, Willie Bill felt clean. He rose just before dawn and dressed before he walked the final distance down into Cayenta. Thank you. We have a few minutes left for questions and answers. Excuse me. Questions and answers. We have a few minutes left for questions. Who knows whether there will be answers? So any questions or...
So please stand up or raise your hand and a mic will be brought to you if you'd like to ask a question.
Address to anybody up here?
Anybody? Okay, a mic will be brought to you. It's the coming.
Some really peaceful tidbits there, tantalizing. I'm wondering if any of copies of this book are available here today, and if so, where might you find them after the show?
Thank you. What's your name?
You planted her, didn't you? She's your shill.
Our books are available locally at Yves Restaurant, Diane Furrows, and some other places. Online at Amazon. And we do have a few today. We wanted to respect the policies of Open Circle. We do not have them available inside, but I have a dozen copies. We have permission to sell them outside on the street or across the street. If any of you are interested, we have a dozen of them. All of them are signed by all four of the people. So you have that nice little thing if you wanted as a Christmas gift.
Hey. Now stop.
Any other questions, comments for anybody up here? Up here?
Over here? You want to stand up and then they'll see you?
Yeah, okay.
Here?
And I think...
Okay, wait in the back first.
Oh.
Hi.
Sorry.
She asked the question I was going to ask you.
Okay.
Good job, Jim.
Thanks.
And here?
Okay.
He's coming with your mic.
Oh. Although my voice can carry.
No.
Okay, I'm wondering in terms of the editing and re-edit. Okay, I'm wondering in terms of the editing and re-editing that you're the group, like are you the entire group that examines each other's versions before you get to it?
Yeah, it was just four of us buddies, and we felt we were fairly knowledgeable about the process of writing and benefited enormously by analyzing the stories by each other, and decided early on not to have an outside person get in there or other people, and to just keep it with the four of us and see what we could come up with. The other way I think would work. This is how we decided to do it.
I like that. You know, it should be people that are aware of how to do things, right? And but the other thing I was going to ask is that terms of the, let's say, the severity of the critiquing that you do with each other, how many versions do you run through before you come to a?
Well, after we got our stories finished, we re-edited it at least 3 times, that material, and came up with versions after each editing. And so these have been edited and edited and edited into several versions. When Bob initially proposed this idea, he said, well, why don't we do an anthology of the best writers at Lake Chapala? And we thought, boy, that's too complicated. Why don't we just use our own stories? And then we wanted to get very concentrated on just ourselves, what we could come up with.
I think that's it for today.
Oh, another question.
We can take a few more?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to, I didn't know this.
Go ahead.
Just a quick comment here, but actually, a woman's anthology group started getting together, and word got around, there are 7 of us, and one of whose work is in there is Martin and Everett. And what actually happened is that the men and the writers group kept saying, there's a women's anthology, how come there's not a men's anthology? So before you knew it, there was a men's anthology, and they beat us to the punch and got theirs printed before. But if you come back on December 27th, you'll hear the women reading from the women's anthology.
I only want to say these are some of the finest writers in all of Mexico.
Hey, wow!
And just because they're here doesn't mean, just any old person standing up and reading their stories. So I just want to say how fortunate we are and what tremendous talent we do have living among us here in our village. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, writers, beautiful writers. A couple of quick announcements. We have a gray sweater with some knitting over there. And we also have this really cool thing now where Roy Nolan is offering to, you can purchase DVDs from him of the talks. And he's created a catalog that's coming out very soon, and you can go back to 7 years to purchase talks.
Wow.
So if you have talks of loved ones and older friends and all that, they'll be available. And right now, if you want to purchase today's talk, you can talk to him, and it's 100 pesos, which is very sweet. So if you would all, please, you can turn on your cell phones, stack your chairs, pick up your coffee cups and throw them away. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. Thank you so much.